Jay Glazer joins us now. He is the man, the myth, the legend. I saw you tweeting, Jay, that you hate this time of year where it comes because you hang out with your guys, and it is pretty cool. Talk football, get ready for the NFL, and then, boom, if you don't have the Super Bowl, all of a sudden when the NFC Championship and the AFC Championship weekend is over, the season just comes to a screeching halt after all of the excitement, after all of the anticipation. You're suddenly left with only one game.
Yeah, and for me, like I told you how important for me, how much I need a team.
Yeah.
I'm in here in LA and we're still in lockdown, so I don't have my fight team. Unbreakable's closed except for, the parking lot workouts. It really isn't my thing. MVP, we're not in person, so these guys are my team in person, and I have them. Yeah, I struggle every year around kind of this time and a couple times during the off season. We get together a couple times in the off season, and man, I live for those.
Yeah.
But I was telling Howie like yesterday, I'm like, man, just make sure you buy your phone because you know how much I struggle right after. Like I don't see you guys because we have so much fun. Like that's my football family, and my football family to me is one that's really just as important as my regular family. To be honest, like we're there for each other in all sorts of things, and we're there for each other to obviously laugh our butts off, but. Man, we've been there for each other for all our divorces, and there's a lot of divorces.
It's funny because
we're always there for each other.
I've been fortunate enough to see you guys on the Fox lot in studio, and I always say the best television sounds very similar whether there's a camera running or not. And you know what I'm talking about. Like there's a lot of difference sometimes between the way guys will talk in the green room and the way they'll talk when the lights actually come on and the camera and there's, microphones and there's a stress level, right? It's a 100-yard walk or whatever it is from the green room at Fox to the actual studios there. And yet you guys, and I think it speaks well to your chemistry, sound very similar sitting watching games in front of the chairs, having a drink as you do when you're in front of the cameras. And that's hard to pull off.
Exactly the same, except I don't curse on TV.
Yeah, right.
Like otherwise, I am. Howie used to have a counter, and I come in these meetings. It's just how I talk. I'm from Jersey, and it's just how I talk. And it's I use it as free expression, the F word. And all of a sudden, I see him, pressing this little thing and pressing this little thing. I'm like, what the bleep is that? And he's pressing the thing. I'm like, I don't get it. They're all laughing, and it turns out he had a curse word counter for me. But other than that, like, dude. When we rehearse, we don't really say what we're going to say in rehearsal. So first time you guys are hearing it on air at home is the first time we're really saying it because we want it to be natural. And, I mean, it's funny when we have guests come in because I remember, I'll never forget, first time we had Reggie Bush in as a guest. He was playing for the Lions for a playoff game, and I was doing a sit-down with him on the football field there as his segment. And we rehearsed them, and we were just doing like we normally do. We're messing around, we're screwing around, and all of a sudden Reggie's like, all right, well, when are we rehearsing? I was like, no, that was it. He's like, what do you mean that was it? I'm like, yeah, that was it. He's like, no. You guys are crazy. I can't do that. Like, you guys, no. He starts freaking out. We're like, whoa. All right. And we realized that we just have such good chemistry together and just play off each other. Look, and for everybody at home who's trying to break into television, and I tell this to every player also, the way you're supposed to be, man, we're just sitting in a bar talking sports, right? That's why I can't stand when people come on and go, you got the number 1 ranked offense against the number 2 defense, and something's got to get, like, man, nobody talks like that. Yeah. Right? And obviously we know that. We could read that in USA Today. But, man, let's, give me something that I can't hear. I can't read somewhere else. But also, that camera is the bartender. Yeah. Or your friend. Don't get so afraid by it. Just think, hey, I'm just, like, if we are sitting in a bar, you and your friends, and me and your friend, we could sit there all day long and talk about football. But when the camera comes on and the lights, people get very nervous. So I've always just looked at that camera as if that's just the bartender. Or I used to look at it like that was Strahan, and Strahan would look at it like that was me. Yeah. And that's the advice I have for anybody trying to break in this business. Don't get so scared. Just look at it like he's the bartender and just speak as if you're, trying to entertain people at a bar.
It's such a good point, and I've done enough television now that's great advice. And it's amazing how many guys are all-stars in the green room and then fall apart as soon as they actually get in front of the camera because they tighten up, they tense up, they're afraid, they're getting their mic on. Like, there's something about, you get dressed up, obviously, you're wearing nice clothes, and you take that little walk, and it's amazing how much different it can be. So the best compliment I can give is you guys are the same in front of the camera as you are not in front of the camera, and that's the best advice, I think, the best compliment I think you can give anybody who is in the television universe. All right, let's dive in here. There are, I don't know if you agree. We started off the show talking about this. I'm not sure we've ever had more big-name quarterbacks and more uncertainty about the quarterback position in general in the NFL. So let me just toss a couple of names out there at you. You give me kind of a read on how you see.
I don't know where they're going yet. It's way too early.
Yeah.
But before you go into that, don't be so surprised by it, because last year,
it was wild.
Tom Brady was on the open market.
That's right.
Tom Brady was on the open market, right? And man, there weren't a million suitors, and I'm sitting there going, "Oh, these teams are nuts." Bruce Arians said it perfect yesterday. He said all it took was one man, as in Tom Brady, how much he changes everybody else.
That's right.
Every quarterback should learn from him. And quarterbacks who want to be selfish and just care about what they're doing, man, Tom Brady makes sure everybody else knows how to watch film better, knows how to sleep better, knows how to prepare. But you know who else does that? Dak Prescott. That's what people don't understand about Dak or don't appreciate. Make sure everybody else gets their sleep the right way and studies the right way. And there's always so much more that you can give at that position. And, Tom was on the open market. You think how ridiculous that is now. He's going for his 10th Super Bowl, okay, and he was on the market. So I'm not so surprised that there's so much out there in the open market now.
So speaking of the open market, the only two teams, you will know better than me, that it seemed like really kicked the tires aggressively on Brady were the Bucks and maybe the Titans. No, there's a couple others. That you thought were really legit in play.
The Dolphins, I think the Dolphins, but they didn't have enough there. The 49ers definitely considered it because he wanted to go there. I will tell you this, the Saints, that's where they were going to go if Breeze retired.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yep. That's where Tom wanted to go, and that's where Sean Payton wanted to go if Drew retired.
So now that you've had Brady take a team to the Super Bowl, and now you have all these other guys potentially out there, doesn't this make a lot of – NFL is a copycat league like every place is, right? Somebody has success.
Yep.
Now everybody's looking at Brady, and they're saying, well, maybe we're only a quarterback away. And there are certainly teams, the Bears, the Colts, the Patriots, like you could probably run through a lot that could feel like they have enough talent surrounding that if they get the right quarterback in, everything changes. And there are probably a lot more teams than the ones I just named. So Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, we know, is leaving. Carson Wentz. How many guys of those do you think end up on different teams? We know Stafford is going to. Do you buy into Deshaun Watson moving on? What do you think the Eagles do with Carson Wentz? How do you break those scenarios out in your mind as we roll into the offseason?
Well, I think they brought a Frank Reich guy in, Nick Sirianni, to make it work with Carson Wentz. And look, I talked to him. I said that, man, you got to – and I talked to some of the candidates, you got to go in there and tell them how we're going to make Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts look like Drew Brees and Taysom Hill. And that's what you have to do. That's the only solution. There's no other solution but to make it like that. So that's why they went that route, and they were going strong on offense. Stafford, as we know, man, I think Stafford could be really good in a few places. He maybe a place like San Francisco, maybe in Indy. Deshaun Watson, that's the guy I give up everything for. I mean, you don't come across guys like that too often. On a team that bad, he led the league in passing. He is a leader. He's a role model. He's the type of guy you want leading your team, leading your prayer service, married into your family. Like there's not too many of them out there. There's guys like him and Mahomes and, man, so even at Jacksonville, I'd say, hey, I'd rather have Deshaun than Trevor Lawrence because Deshaun is a known quantity.
That's actually a fascinating idea. So do you think Urban Meyer would consider that in any way, or do you think the Jags are completely committed to the idea of Trevor Lawrence as the overall number one pick? Like if the Texans called him.
I don't think they've gotten to that. I don't think they've gotten to that yet.
In division would also be tough. Yeah.
I would do it because, man, I'd try if I'm the Jets. I try. If I'm number 3, it's Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way I'm not. It's Deshaun Watson. So he is elite. He is a top 5 quarterback in this league, and the type of guy, his contract's already set. You could build around him. So, yeah, I would, all these other guys who come in, odds are they're not all going to pan out. It's just go by history. You just don't know which ones aren't going to pan out.
Now,
Deshaun, he already is.
Yeah, do you really believe that the Texans' relationship with Deshaun Watson in his mind is so broken that there's no way he goes back? Or do you think if they hire the right head coach and if they sit down with him and if they try to work the process back, what are you hearing about how irretrievably broken that relationship is or is not?
I think that their answer would have been Eric Bieniemy, and that's what a lot of this caused it. Because he would have been able to bring over a lot of the same stuff that they're doing with Mahomes.
Yeah.
Probably be able to expand more on what Deshaun does. Man, look, I've seen worse fights in the league between players and their teams. And when it comes down to it, people don't like to lose their money and get fined. And last time we saw somebody just sit out the whole year was Le'Veon Bell, and that didn't work out well.
Yeah.
And here's the one thing. For those people who are ripping Deshaun, saying, well, players don't have the right to be in those meetings, and if they don't want, well, listen, that's not it. If they tell you you're going to be a part of it, then they lied to him, so he has a right to be upset. If they say if they decide he's not going to be part of it, that's their right too, right? And he shouldn't be upset by that. I think I know what he's upset about is that they told him he was going to be part of it, and then has nothing to do with it. And look, they already don't have a great reputation over there. They got to rebuild some culture. And I just think that they need to go above and beyond. I think it's, in his mind, it's probably not repairable, but, there's been other situations in the past where you didn't think they were repairable, and it depends whether the team caved on Khalil Mack. They didn't really have to, the Raiders, but they did. They didn't want to deal with the heat. I did a story after Strahan's record-breaking year that he was out. He wanted to leave New York. He's not come back, no way. And man, I was at CBS at the time. We broke into the NCAA. Breaking news that RJ Glazer reported Michael Strahan has demanded a trade from the New York Giants. He does not want to be there. Will not play in New York again. It was ugly through training camp, and then he came back and went to the Hall of Fame of the Giants. So things have a way of, sometimes feelings. Teams are always have the power to mend the relationship. It depends how far they want to go.
Couple of other questions. I appreciate you, Jay Glazer. Go follow him on Twitter. He's fantastic. Fox NFL Insider. Where would you make the favorite for Matthew Stafford? And how rapidly do you think a decision like that gets made?
I can't say yet. It's going to have to be before I think it's the 5th or 10th day of the new league year because he's owed a roster bonus then.
Yeah.
So it's going to have to be before. I don't even. Was that March? Might be March 10th or something along those lines. I don't have the calendar in front of me.
Yeah, but relatively soon, he'll have to make a decision and the team will have to make a decision.
Within the month.
Yeah.
But yeah, within the month. But man, this is a year. You just said there's a lot of supply this year.
Yeah.
And last year there was a lot of supply, and look what happened. No one touched Cam Newton.
That's right.
Right. So there's a lot of supply last year, and guys like that were kind of left out in the cold. But that a lot of that was because of, they weren't able to see his shoulder and his foot because of COVID. That had more to do with that than anything else. But there'll be, when there's a lot of supply, there's going to be somebody who'll be like, oh my God, how do I get left out here?
What about Aaron Rodgers? We saw how bad and crushed he was.
That's crazy if they let Aaron. I
right?
hear you, but they are crazy. I hear you, but man, they will be so miserable because they don't know what it's like. They haven't had a lot of adversity in that team.
Yep.
Right? They've had Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. It's not the real world. It's like we went from Peyton Manning to Drew Brees and then to Tom Brady. This doesn't happen except in Green Bay. So, man, I would be real careful if I'm them about, be careful what you wish for there.
Last question. I appreciate you, Jay. How much credit does the NFL deserve in this COVID year to not only get every game in, But to have it occur in the schedule in which it was placed, and now we got whatever it is, 12 days until an epic Super Bowl between Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and Tom Brady and the Bucs. This is one of the all-time most impressive things I think the NFL has ever done, and I'm not even hearing them get praised as much as I think they deserve. The players, the coaches, the league, everybody, to pull this off is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. I agree. And look, I don't do that politicizing the pandemic crap. I don't do that crap. But, man, I really think that the country needed something like this, that a distraction. We needed a distraction. And it couldn't have just been Tiger King.
Yeah, no kidding. It feels like a long time ago.
Distraction. And, remember back on the draft, people were like up in arms. You can have the draft. How could you have the draft when this is going on? And Roger Goodell, man, he was just like, I think this country needs this. And he took bullets, and
he was right.
The draft, and it was spectacular. He was right. He was right. And then same thing for this. We got through this season. I talked to both Bruce Arians and Andy Reid about it. And both those guys were like, man, we are so happy we can give people an escape. Like, man, and with what just happened this year with politics, it's unfortunately that no one's allowed to be in the middle anymore. It's just everybody's liking to hate each other. At least this gives people some common ground to have a little love and cheer for each other. And man, it was an odd year because for me, I'll be honest with you, and Kurt Menefee on our show is our therapist.
Yeah,
he's one we all talk to, right? Because the rest of us are crazy, and Kurt's pretty sane. And I say pretty.
Yeah.
And I told him, in the beginning of the year, I said, I'm really kind of struggling here because, man, I'm reporting on COVID in the NFL when people are dying for this. And he's like, I know, but, man, we got it. It's your job, and we've got to give people an escape. The people need anything, something. And we're in the middle of two sides politically battling. And he's like, we need to escape. And we have the racial injustice. And he's like, we need an escape from the real world. And I know it's kind of – and I was like, man, but I just feel guilty that I'm talking just about football. He's like, that's our job. And now by the end of it, I was in that kind of funk for about 4 or 5 weeks. In the middle of the season, I'm like, man, I'm glad you talked me right because you're right. We needed this. Like, we needed something else to root for. We're not doing a lot of rooting and cheering these days in this country. And we need something to root and cheer for. So, and I'll tell you this, the players, man, I give them so much credit. There was so much, I think it was Sean Payton told me before the year, and he was the first one in the league to have it. He said, the trouble we're going to have is there's 100 stories or 200 stories in our building. In other words, each player and each person there, they go home, and they have wives and families and children, and maybe some are going to school in person, maybe some or teachers, maybe some, and they're in person, and man, they come back, or they were the sick parent, or they have a sick child, or there's all these stories, and somehow we have to get 200 stories to all come back in every week, match up together, and be healthy. And when he said it to me, I was like, oh, dude, that's never going to happen. He's like, I hear you. It's going to take the players and all of us doing something that I hope that we're able to do. And when you put it that way, you really see how far above and beyond the players went, coaches went, personnel went, everybody went to keep each other healthy. Really did a great. It was man, they unified.
And Jay, every time you come on the show, we're going to get tremendous feedback. You're fantastic. I appreciate it. I'm glad you were there, and I'm glad you guys all got it through. Keep up the good work, and we'll hopefully talk to you again sometime soon, my man.